I wanted to kick it off. We got a lot to talk about, but maybe we start with Bitcoin because it was one of the first things you learned about. I think you had a 4-hour coffee with someone that turned into a day when you first learned about it. You were one of the very first people to create a fund that would invest in this instrument back when nobody was even talking about it, and you were really early. You've said a few things about Bitcoin. I'm just going to quote you back and then give it over to you. You said, quote, "I believe Bitcoin is the biggest trade of our generation." You've said Bitcoin is a serial killer. It's going to go through 40 or 50 different industries. And then one of my favorite quotes from you is you said it's the final piece of the protocol puzzle that is the internet. Even in the 1990s, the famous economist Milton Friedman said the only thing missing from the internet was an e-cash system. That's what Bitcoin is. That's what the other blockchains are. It's just a protocol for moving data around, and that's massive. Dan, how do you start this conversation and how do you talk about Bitcoin to people that are newish to it or know a little bit about it?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I've tried so many different angles over the years to explain Bitcoin, and it really is true that everyone has their own light bulb moment. There's a lot of different perspectives people have. Like if you find a gold bug, explain it in 2 seconds. They're like, great, got it, I'm in. But there's other people who are way more skeptical, think, we already have a currency in the United States, why do we need another one? So, there's like so many different angles. I do think the concept of it being the final piece of the protocol puzzle that is the internet is one that really helps people get their head around it, because most of us don't know a ton about the internet, but we know there's a bunch of protocols like TCP/IP that help move data around. But we needed a finance one, right? And the internet changed everything else in our lives, commerce, communication, all that. But it really didn't touch finance, right? Banks are basically the way they were when the Medici set them up. Credit cards been charging the same rate since 1958. Western Union's been doing the same thing for 140 years. So finance really wasn't touched by the internet, and that's basically what blockchain is. It's bringing the internet to finance. It's connecting, billions of people ultimately together without having to pay some kind of, oligopolist control on the payment rail. And you're going to use cryptography to, protect and provide trust rather than, legacy financial institutions.
Yeah, I find it so strange that it had like a 20-year lag, Dan, until we finally found the internet of money. And, I actually had a 2-year stint in New York City as the CFO of a dot-com startup from 99 to 01. And I was part of the group, where I was just all in on dot-coms. My finance buddies would meet me for drinks and they would just say, please stop talking about this is the next biggest thing. I said, it's Columbus and the New World. And we rode that up and we rode it back down. But like you said, finance didn't change. And even fintech, and London's one of the great centers of fintech, it always seems to be like a tech plug-in to an old school system, like internet banking, where it never actually innovated. Why do you think there was that 20-year lag? Was it because the blockchain hadn't yet been adopted? If the blockchain wasn't adopted or Bitcoin didn't exist in '09, would we still be waiting for this to happen?
Oh, I think so. Satoshi Nakamoto nailed it. There were decades of attempts to do it. Adam Back's Hashcash before that, and a bunch of projects like that. They were really close. Some gold-backed tokens, but they all lacked one or two of the key ingredients. And Satoshi put together a handful of those concepts into the first fully functional digital currency that used decentralized trust. And, then you're off to the races. So, who knows if Satoshi hadn't invented it, it might have taken, 2 more years, it might have taken 20 more years. But a perspective to have is there's kind of an impatience. And I remember there was a time when people said, it took the internet 20 years to happen because it took 20 years to go from Netscape to, Google and Facebook. But it took 20 years to get to Netscape, right? Like it's been a 50-year journey to get from the original creation of TCP and IP to get to what we have now on the internet. So blockchain's 12 years old, so it's just at the beginning. And that's why I'm so excited. I think there's another 20 years of just absolutely fascinating disruption to come.